Welcome back to the Bama Online podcast. This one on a Thursday, June the 29th, 2023. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnLine.com. Very pleased to be joined this time around by one of my new cohorts there on the On3 network. The one and only Joseph Hastings does an outstanding job covering recruiting along with Andrew Bone, Tim Watts. As you know, incredible staff we've assembled now at BamaOnLine.com since the migration over to the new network. And first of all, Joe, welcome to the Bama Online podcast.
Travis, I'm so excited about this. I've heard people call us the Alabama Avengers, making up nicknames of that nature. But this group is just so great to be a part of. And I'm glad to finally be hopping on a podcast with you and talking about Alabama recruiting. I'm very excited about this.
Well, we're just glad you have time from your busy schedule. Man, you talk about the month of June for Joseph Hastings. I know Tim Watts extremely well. We've worked together for 20 years at BamaOnLine.com. I know where he comes from a recruiting coverage perspective. He's traveled some of those same roads, some of those same airways that you have. So I'm going to guess you're getting mileage out of all this. I mean, you've been to what? California, you've been to, you name it, man. You've been everywhere.
I have been everywhere. The only problem is I keep using different airlines each time and different car rental companies. So I'm not really racking up the points too much. I am using the Chase credit card for each of them. So I'm accumulating points there, trying to be smart. But yeah, it's been JetBlue or Delta or American Airlines, different ones each time. So yeah, the mileage has not been racked up just yet.
That's all right. As long as you've got that credit card rewards thing going, you should be okay from that perspective. But Joe, so much to talk about just in relation to, I guess, yesterday, right? Kind of a ho-hum Wednesday going on. And then first and foremost, we get the news. I don't think it was totally unexpected because we had heard even a couple of weeks ago after his visit to Alabama that North Dakota State basketball transfer Grant Nelson was likely to land with the Crimson Tide. It came to fruition yesterday. Let me get your reaction to that. And I know you've had conversations with his father, Nels, and also with Grant's high school coach, Derek Gathman, I believe it is. So just give us some takeaways over these last couple of weeks, because it seemed to be in limbo. Tim had told us here on the podcast that things were still trending in that direction, but I guess just some, as we talked about with Tim earlier in the week, some I's to dot and some T's to cross.
Yeah, it's been a long two weeks and 2 days just waiting for the official announcement to be made. On3's Joe Tipton had reported that the expectation was that Grant Nelson was going to be transferring to Alabama, but there were some things to still work out behind the scenes, and an official announcement wasn't made until yesterday. And when it was, it wasn't necessarily a huge surprise for Alabama fans. This is something that we've been expecting to happen, but for it to finally be made official, it's massive, because you look at Alabama's team this upcoming season and you picture it with Grant Nelson and you picture it without Grant Nelson. It's two completely different teams. You're not looking at the same basketball team if Grant Nelson is not on it versus Grant Nelson on the Crimson Tide. And for what Alabama did, on the recruiting trail, for them to land Nelson over Arkansas, it's massive. We talk about Arkansas being a team that they're gonna have to face in the SEC and go up against multiple times in the regular season, potentially in post regular season play. You talk about that, and you realize that you would rather have Grant Nelson on your team than with him with the Razorbacks. And I spoke with his dad, Nels Nelson, about his son's commitment to Alabama. He pretty much told me that it came down to fit. It came down to fit with the Crimson Tide, how Grant would be able to go in there and mesh well with what Nate Oates and company likes to do. You scour the BamaOnLine message boards, other Alabama message boards and Twitter, and you just hear the common theme be said. Grant Nelson fits like a glove in Nate Oates' offense. He's exactly what Nate Oates and company want to do. Now, from a shooting perspective, there's going to be some things to fine-tune there. He's not necessarily an elite shooter from outside, but just being able to get to the rim, attack the basket, his athleticism, he can put somebody on a poster at any given moment. And as he continues to work on his shot, that'll make him even more of a threat. Because you'd have to respect the drive and respect the step back or mid-range shot, whatever he's able to develop. But this is somebody that Alabama fans should be very excited about. And, I talked with his high school head coach, Derek Gaffman at Devil's Lake. And Derek is no longer there at Devil's Lake as the men's basketball coach, but he just really spoke highly of who Grant is as a person, as a player. He said his son looks up to Grant, that after games at North Dakota State, he would go down and sign autographs. So as a person, you're getting somebody who's pretty humble and respects the process, and I think handled things the correct way. And then on the basketball court, he talked about his slasher ability, his handles, being someone who's 6'11". He started off in high school as a freshman at 6 foot, so he learned some guard skills at that point and was able to carry them over to when he became 6'11", a la Anthony Davis or other players who have taken a big jump height-wise. So he's very excited about this addition, and so should Alabama fans be.
Yeah, when you look at Nelson in terms of skill set, his ability to face up the basket and take like-sized players or even defenders that are smaller to the bucket off the bounce is something you just don't see from 6'11" guys. Obviously, he can run the court. He can finish on the break. You mentioned the shooting. I think he's a capable three-point shooter. His percentage wasn't particularly good last season, but I think he can be a guy in those low 30, mid 30%, three-point shooting numbers. Not a guy who's probably going to take 5 or 6 or more a game, but if he can knock down 1 or 2 a game because of his ability to take the ball to the rim, that's going to help set him up and some other folks as well. And so you talked to Gaffman too. I thought Gaffman had an interesting player comp for him, a guy I hadn't really thought about, but it really struck me when I read your update.
Lamar Odom, and I'm a Lakers fan, so I watched Lamar Odom on those championship teams. I remember him, and I was like, because I wasn't able to really figure out a comp for Grant Nelson watching his highlights earlier this year when he went viral in January. And then I started to think about Lamar. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see it. Lamar wasn't necessarily a sharpshooter from the outside, but he could make the occasional three, especially from the corner. He could attack the basket. He could also make plays for his teammates. And I think that's going to be really interesting with Nelson, depending on the lineup that he's in, for him to attack the basket and kick it to outside shooters. So if you put him at the 5, he's going to potentially have Aaron Estrada, Jared Stevenson, potentially Mark Sears, guys to kick it out to who are capable three-point shooters. And, you like that because if the defense collapse on him in the paint, he's going to be able to dish it out and rack up some assists. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's somebody who on some nights leads Alabama in assists and is their primary playmaker, depending on the matchup. So what I really like that comparison, watching both of them. Obviously, Lamar's a left-hander, Grant's a right-hander. I think the athleticism, the comp is definitely true there. I think Lamar may have been a little bit of a better ball handler, at that point in his career. But Nelson's somebody who has those guard-like ball handling capabilities, and when you have that and the ability to attack the basket, you have somebody who could be really special there in Nate Oates' offense. And you talked about the shot too. You look at his shot, it's not a bad form. It's not a bad, the fundamentals aren't terrible. It's not like something that's going to need a lot of work to be done. But like you said, if he can get it down consistently, like mid 30s, low 30s, hit a 3 or 2 every now and then, keep the defense on their heels, wow, it just the sky's the limit for someone like him. And you're looking, if that shot is consistent and he's able to make it on a regular basis, you're looking at a potential lottery pick. That's what I think that's what his ceiling is. It's just going to really kind of depend on where the shot goes.
Yeah, and you don't think Alabama's done with the portal at this point, not with the departure of Javon Quinterly heading to the transfer portal, the Alabama guard. So we've heard some names like Joe Toussaint of West Virginia, I guess. Joe, Alabama still has a spot or 2 to potentially fill, I guess. Obviously getting Stevenson committed here and reclassified for 2023, man, it's crazy. Just the moving pieces in college basketball on almost a week-to-week basis, and we're in late June. We're headed into July, and so much of this is still going on.
That's the thing. You thought, like, okay, once Nelson was reported back on June 12th, I believe, and then Jared Stevenson committed a week ago. You're like, okay, it's set. We got 12 out of 13. Maybe they take in another transfer, but it's not necessarily a necessity. The team is fine. And then JQ hits the transfer portal. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. Obviously, the timing of it wasn't necessarily appreciated. He's somebody who's, given Alabama some really great moments, but you would have hoped that it would have happened a few weeks ago, or would have happened at a more opportune time. But it really makes the additions of Aaron Estrada and Latrell Wrightso Jr. in particular that much more important for Alabama for this upcoming season. Just talking about guys in the backcourt who can, distribute, make plays for themselves, make plays for teammates, things of that nature. So that was a huge pickup. Now with Joe Toussaint out of West Virginia, we'll see. There's some reports that he is expected to take a day visit to Alabama. Still waiting to see if that date has been locked in 100% yet. But that would be an interesting addition there too. You would have to imagine they're going to go the transfer portal route. I don't know if someone like a Boogie Fland, a class of 2024 prospect, will reclassify and do something similar to Jaron Stevenson. But who knows? I mean, like you said, things are changing. It's so fluid nowadays. But you definitely expect for that 12th spot at least to be filled. I think the question would be, would the 13th spot be filled? Maybe, maybe not. But I would expect that 12th one to be filled at some point.
Yeah, a mix of some good and bad news over this last week for Alabama men's hoop, but with Stevenson and Nelson coming in, where that helps offset the less than positive feedback you got from Javon. And you're right, having Estrada in there, I think he's going to be a presence on the basketball for sure. Wrightso can give you some of that. Mark Sears. And as you said, in outlining what Nelson brings to the table, Nate really likes all his guys. If they can all handle it, that's great, because he wants to push the basketball. It's not a system where you get a defensive board and you locate the outlet pass to the point guard and that's it. If you get the board and you can push, more power to you. And I think we'll see that with Grant Nelson. Hey, some other big news, I guess you could say really big news, because it involved a defensive lineman here midweek with the Alabama football program. An in-state defensive line target in Isaia Faga flips from the Utes, Joe, to the in-state Alabama Crimson Tide. Give us some background there.
So I think on the surface, when you look at Isaia and you look at his recruiting profile, you're like, okay, he's an Alabama-based defensive lineman. He's committed to Utah. This should be an easy one for the Crimson Tide, right? No, it wasn't an easy one, because Isaia was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, so he's got ties to near the West Coast, out west. His uncle, Lewis Powell, is the defensive ends coach there at Utah. Utah was the first program to offer him when he was a sophomore. So there's some long-standing connections there with the Utes coaching staff and the program in general. That was going to be hard to overcome. So, Isaia, his father is currently deployed overseas. He comes from a military background. So he's lived in North Carolina, lived in Alaska, now living in Alabama. So there isn't necessarily like a full-on tie to the state of Alabama that, it was a favorite. The in-state school should have been the favorite. The Crimson Tide should have pulled off this flip. That wasn't the case. He was considering the likes of Texas as well. Florida was in the mix for a little bit. So, all that is to say that this wasn't an easy flip for Alabama, and especially considering the defensive line outlook in this recruiting cycle and how there aren't really many guarantees to land your top two in-state defensive line targets, and Jeremiah Beeman and Isaia Faga. That's massive for the program. You talk about what Isaia brings to the table. He's somebody who's a little bit on the lighter side for a three-tech defensive lineman. He's about 6'2", 285 pounds. But when you put on his tape, you see that first that first quick step. How he's able to slip between offensive linemen. I thought that was probably the most outstanding attribute that I saw. Is just how he's able to fit through those crevices and get to the background. When you look at the rating, maybe it isn't as high as some other defensive linemen, but I think the big thing is looking for the production. But he influences plays, even if he isn't making the tackle or the sack himself. He's redirecting the quarterback or running back to his teammates. So Isaia is somebody that Alabama fans should be very excited about. And they're looking to land Edric Houston. They're looking to land Dalen Evans, some other defensive lineman targets. Those aren't necessarily guaranteed. So to get those two guys in Beeman and Faga committed, massive for the Crimson Tide and Freddie Roach.
Yeah, in a word, when I watched Faga's clips, disruptive. And you said it, 6'2", 285. So not classic three technique size, but in what Alabama likes to do, with their base, he can play some end. He can play some 5 technique at that size. But certainly what you see is a guy that in some pass rush situations inside, projecting him could be really problematic. I mean, he's more than a block eater. This is a guy who projects, again, as a strong, pretty advanced in the way of using his hands, that short space quickness that you talked about that he uses to take advantage of high school linemen. I'm not saying he's going to be Quinnen Williams. I'm just saying in the way that he operates, you can see some of that with him. And this is a guy, I think that in time, right? Would you guess that he's going to move up in the rankings? I just don't know if a lot of folks have had a chance to really check him out to this point, understandably. But in time, I think this guy is going to be on the move.
I think people, especially opposing fan bases, they're like, oh, he commits to Alabama, he's going to get the Bama bump. You hear that so many times, but
watch the tape.
Yeah, you watch the tape. And not only that, Alabama's had so much success with defensive linemen. So when you put a defensive lineman with the potential that Isaia has into that scheme, and he's getting the coaching that he's getting. I spoke with his father earlier this morning, and he talked about just the amount of experience on that coaching staff, from Freddie Roach to Nick Saban to Kevin Steele, Charlie, every single person, that Isaia is going to be able to interact with on a day-to-day basis. It only should elevate his production. So you see Jeremiah Smith, the number 2 overall player in the country, top ranked wide receiver. He's committed to Ohio State. If he's committed to Ohio State and what they've done at the receiver position in recent years, you should have his upside projected higher in a system like that, in an offense like that, compared to I don't know, Utah or North Carolina or a program that isn't necessarily known for being a wide receiver factory. If you put them in a system, in a coaching staff that's accustomed to developing that position at a high level, yes, their ranking should go up, because you're projecting their upside. You're projecting what they're expected to do at the next level and beyond. So yeah, considering the tape that he has, like you mentioned, and then also considering the this system that he's going to, he is going to be deserving of a rankings bump. Now, how high of a rankings bump that'll be remains to be seen. Is he going to push for top 100 status? Not 100% certain yet, but it should be a guarantee that he's going to get to 4-star status and knock on that door of top 100 overall.
Yeah, people kind of talk about a Utah offer like it's a G5, a low G5. And this is a team, ask USC about Utah this past season, right? In the Pac-12 championship game. Ask the Florida Gators, team you know a little bit about anyway. Ask the Florida Gators about that upcoming season opener in Salt Lake. How much are they really looking forward to making that trip? It's a really good program, man. And yeah, I would guess maybe the size a little bit. Maybe people wonder if he's a little bit of a tweener between end and tackle. But if he's 285 already, if you play at 290, 295 at Alabama, he's not that far away. He really isn't. So that will be interesting. But I agree. I think more often than not, the offers will tell you a lot about how a guy checks in that particular area more than anything else. Hey, I know we're also tracking, speaking of the lines of scrimmage, a big potential commitment from an offensive lineman from Texas, Michael Uini. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Looks like he's down, Joseph, to Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. You caught up with him earlier in the week. He had been on a whirlwind of sort of visits to his favorites. Is this a guy playing it close to the vest where his finalists are concerned, or is he tipping his hand? Where's he kind of at with tomorrow looming?
Yeah, so when we talked, it was more so keeping it close to the vest, not really revealing too much. He did say that his mind was made up. So coming off that official visit to Georgia, he took this past weekend, and then also he took one to Alabama in the midweek, and then Michigan the weekend before. His mind was already made up when we had spoken, which I thought was pretty interesting. He had yet to inform any coaching staff about his decision. I don't know if that has changed since then. I would imagine so, but his commitment is going to be coming on Friday, June 30th. So we will know soon. He talked about all three of those programs with me. Talking about Alabama, he mentioned just the support that the program has, the preparation for life after football. He said that his family was left speechless after their conversation with Nick Saban. He got to spend time with a few Alabama true freshman offensive linemen in Rod Montgomery, Wilkin Formby, and Olaus Allen. Got to learn a little bit more about the program from their perspective. And it was more of an intimate visit because it was a midweek. So him and Grant Bricks, the only other official visitors, they were pretty much given the red carpet treatment. They were the only ones in town during that time. So he got more of an intimate feel with Eric Wolford and the staff. And he really liked the pitch that Wolford made about his Alabama's offensive line development and just what they've been able to do at the position group in recent years. Switching over to Georgia, he talked about he didn't say necessarily that they're the new Alabama, because I think recruits are a little bit scared to say that. You don't want it to come off in a negative way that, oh, Alabama's the thing of the past and Georgia's the new thing. But he did say that they're becoming the new Alabama in terms of just the standard that they hold themselves to, and what the program has been able to do over these past couple of years, which he was attracted to. He's also attracted to the idea of blocking for Dylan Raiola and Ryan Puglisi, the two quarterback commits there. And he's spoken with Raiola before too. As for Michigan, they were the team that had the predictions made in their favor coming off his official visit. It seemed like they were the team trending, but those official visits to Alabama and Georgia really shook things up in his recruitment. In my opinion, I think he lands in the SEC. I would probably lean Georgia right now, but it's going to be one to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be very fascinating to watch play out, no doubt about it. So we also consider places you've been in this last month, as we talked about earlier. Julian Sayin at the Elite 11 and the 7-on-7 event that was sort of in conjunction with that. Following your coverage, which I was locked into, was it as impressive as it sounded? You were there. Tell us what you saw.
Look, I saw Julian earlier this year at Battle Miami, and I was impressed. I liked everything that I'd seen from him. I thought he checked off all the boxes. Looked like a top 3 quarterback. Those were kind of the things that I was saying. He took it up another level with this one here, and I think it really kind of starts off with where he's at physically. He definitely seems to have filled out a little bit, especially with his upper body. That was a little bit of a knock on him, that he was a little bit too small. He's definitely filled out a little bit. He's up to 6'2", 195 now. That's what he told me during our conversation. Obviously, didn't get to see him on the scale or anything like that, but for him to be there physically, that kind of stood out to me the most. You talk about everything that he does, it's from the A- to A+ range with almost every single thing that he put forth at the Elite 11, whether it was his footwork, which was consistent on every single throw, his throwing motion, which had zero wasted motion. He had a quick release. It has a quick release. I mean, every single throw got out of his hand with pop. He's not necessarily somebody who's going to throw the laces off the football or anything like that. He's not going to, put fire on it like some other quarterbacks can, but, he does throw it with decent, actually very good velocity. There was a receiver during the first 7-on-7 portion at the Elite 11, who when he caught the ball from Julian, he's like, that, what came in hot, that's a 5-star quarterback right there. So, Julian can definitely put some zip on the ball. He can also make some off-platform throws. He's really good just fundamentally, every single thing from his feet to his shoulder alignment, to his throwing motion. Every throw looks exactly like the previous one. I was just blown away by him, everything that he showcased, what he showcased off the field. If he messed up, he would laugh it off and just go right to the next rep and throw it perfectly. That's just kind of the mentality that he has, and he wants to compete as well. I talked with director of scouting rankings Charles Power about Julian. He's like, I don't think I can recall a quarterback in recent years who's competed at as many events as Julian has. The QB retreat, the 7-on-7s, the going from the Elite 11 finals to the OT7 7-on-7 nationals right after. I mean, this kid just loves playing football. I think Alabama fans will really like him, not only for what he brings to the table on the field, but just for how much he cares about football and how much he wants to win at those things off the field. I mean, he flew out across the country to go to the cookout last week because he saw the visitors list. I mean, that's, that level of dedication, that'll win you a lot of followers and a lot of fans.
No doubt about it. Excitement when you think about Julian Sayin as the sort of ringleader for this 2024 recruiting class, Joe. And You talk about receivers, man. Then you go to the UA Next Future 50 down at IMG in Bradenton, Florida, and you get a firsthand account of Ryan Williams, the outstanding wide receiver commitment for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then you also see Jamie Ffrench of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, Florida. Talk about those two guys and maybe envisioning a future where perhaps they're working on the outside with Julian Sayin delivering the football.
Wow, what a future to think about there with Alabama. Just the talent that they're going to be bringing into the receiver room in this class, and then potentially in 2025 with Ryan Williams already committed, and then Jamie Ffrench. So with Ryan, I got to see him earlier this year at the Under Armour Atlanta camp, but there was a lot of interviews that we were doing, a lot of things going on both sides of the field. I couldn't really see him up close. This was the first time. His speed is out of this world. I mean, it is special. And, when he's running his routes, especially in the one-on-one situations, he really keeps defenders on his heels because he can go any way. He can go literally any single direction at any moment, and he sells the outside in and then goes in perfectly. I mean, his speed is just it's just magnificent.
Electric. Yeah.
Electric, absolutely electric. His catch radius too really stood out to me. There was one pass that he caught on a post route where the throw was a little bit high and a little bit behind. He just snatched it and then kept going at full speed. It was probably, arguably, I know the video that I posted of his one-on-one blew up, but that was arguably, in my opinion, his best catch of the day. Just how he was able to catch that, bring it in, and keep it in stride, even though it was an off-place throw. He's also got, some decent height and talk about filling out his frame. Him and Julian have done that over the past few months since I've seen them. He's starting to fill it out a little bit more. Look, he's not, 175, 180, kind of that ideal wide receiver weight range, but he's getting there, and he will get there by the time it comes for him to be at Alabama and strap up in the crimson and white. So yeah, there's nothing more I can say about Ryan Williams that hasn't been said already before. I think he's honestly, just looking at recruits, regardless of class, seniors, juniors, sophomores, he's a top 10 player in the country, which is, I don't necessarily like putting those type of expectations on a young man like that, but he is worth the hype. And then Jamie Ffrench. I talked with one of our On3 rankings experts, Cody Belair, about him, and he just said that he's Mr. Consistent. He'll cut you up. He'll dice you up. He's somebody who's going to consistently work the chains. Now, does he have to take the top off the defense type of speed that Williams has? No, but he if you need a first down, you're going to Jamie Ffrench. He's just going to be able to move the chains at will. Really, really, really good route runner. Has decent size as well too. For being a rising junior, which is what you look for projecting to the next level. Where they're at physically at this stage, and Jamie's just somebody I continue to be impressed with. He was just making play after play in the 7-on-7 portion of the UA Future 50 event, catching out routes, catching deep throws, near the sideline. Working the middle of the field. He could pretty much do everything. So I was really excited about seeing him. I think I don't necessarily want to bring up Jerry Jeudy's name, but you see a little bit of that in him. And I just think the tandem of those two would be phenomenal if Alabama was able to land both of them.
Ffrench got an announcement coming up, doesn't he?
He does. July 22nd. He's got a top 5 right now. Alabama's in that top 5. Florida State's also in the mix there too. Notre Dame. I know he took a visit to Florida. They weren't in his top 5 before. Maybe they'll get a hat on the table. They're the nearby school, but look, Alabama's leading on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. We continue to feel confident in Bama's chances. Once again, as we stress, recruiting is something that changes all the time, but the way things are kind of shaping out, it really looks like Alabama's in a good spot there. And once again, you talk about how much of a massive addition that would be. It just, him, Ryan Williams, Julian Sayin as their quarterback. It's something that Alabama fans should be really hyped up about.
Yeah, we're getting into announcement season. We just had camp and visit season, and boy, Casey Poe, another big Texan offensive lineman, maybe the top interior offensive lineman for the 2024 cycle. He's got one coming up. Alabama, very prominent in his mix. So kind of transitioning a little bit. Maybe we'll keep you off the road a little bit, but doesn't mean it won't be busy.
Oh, I'm definitely planning on it. If Jamie has the commitment ceremony, I definitely plan on going up there too. I'm from Gainesville, so I'll stop by, see the family, may make a trip out to Ireland Well, so there'll be a little bit more BOL on the road, Joe, on the road in the coming weeks.
All right. We love it. And we love the work you do for us, Joe, at BamaOnLine.com. Love our staff, Tim Watts, Charlie Potter, Clint, Jimmy, Andrew, yourself. The list goes on, and really proud to be a part of the On3 network now with you guys. And you all need to hang out with us at the Bama Online Roundtable, the premium message board of choice for Alabama fans around the globe. Thanks again, Joe. Look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you, Travis, for having me on. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely. For Joseph Hastings, Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us here on the Bama Online podcast. Until next time, so long, everybody.